Hello, and welcome to episode 174 on the Everyday Joy podcast. So good to be here with you. I want to read out a comment on the Everyday Joy Facebook community group. Denise posted and she said, "Worry is a fast getaway on a wooden horse. In other words, it'll get you nowhere. I figure that if you can worry about it, you can pray about it, and a lot better for you in the long run." It's such an incredible quote there, and it's such an incredible community to be a part of. It also ties in really well with today's conversation around prayer. Let's get into it.
If you are having trouble, you should pray. And if you are feeling good, you should sing praises. That's found in James chapter 5, verse 13 in the CEV Bible.
Welcoming into the studio, the one and only Jo Chapman.
Oh, thank you.
Have you had a haircut?
I have had a haircut.
Looks good.
You are the only person who's noticed.
It looks layers.
I have some natural layers.
Yeah, it was a bit shorter.
It is shorter.
Yeah.
It's about an inch shorter. Thank you, Joy.
I notice these things.
Awesome. And I did it to do something for me, you know.
Yeah.
You got to do something for yourself, and just getting your hair done every now and then makes you feel pretty.
It does. I didn't get my hair done for, I think it was coming up to 2 years. I lost a lot of my hair during lockdown, and then I've almost been afraid to go to a hairdresser and get it all chopped off because I'm like, it took me so long to grow this back. But a couple of weeks ago, I went in and got my hair done, and it felt so good, Jo.
Yeah.
And every single day when I wake up and I blow dry my hair, I just like what I see. I feel like I look put together.
Yeah.
Whether or not I feel that on the inside is another question. But no, it's so good.
Well, thank you for noticing, and I feel seen.
There we go. Thank you, Jo. Today we're taking a look at prayer. James chapter 5 verse 13. If you are having trouble, you should pray, and if you are feeling good, you should sing praises. Jo, what are your first impressions of this one?
I think the first impression is that our voice has power. You know, prayer is a conversation, singing is a voice activation. And I think, you know, God created the world with his words, and our words also through prayer and praise are super powerful.
I think for me what jumps out is the prayer and the praises. And when you have trouble, you should press into God and pray. And when you are feeling good, you can say thank you, God, for the good stuff. But either way, through the highs and lows, we've got to keep that communication channel open with God.
Yeah.
That's what jumps out at me. What does this verse, Jo, tell you about who God is or what matters to him?
I think he is like that ever-present Father. You know, he's saying if you have trouble, you should pray. It's like, come and talk to me. You know, like your earthly father, if you've had a great relationship, you know, your dad is there to, you know, share with, fix things, help you. And that's how I see God. He's saying, if you're having trouble, come talk to me. That's prayer. And if you've got anything good, well, sing praises, be happy. And he wants to see that joy. Just like we want our kids to be happy and to have a refuge and a home. That's what God is for us.
Yeah.
And it's an invitation. I see it as an invitation.
Yeah, that's a really great way of looking at it. Imagine reading this verse again, but imagining it printed on like this glossy paper to be an invitation that we're invited to pray and to praise. It's a really lovely way of thinking about it. Do you have a story, Jo, of how this verse has come alive in your world?
I think for me, there is a couple of things, but one thing I wanted to say first of all with prayer, sometimes I've struggled with prayer thinking, you know, growing up, and sometimes in a lot of, you know, churches, prayer is time set aside where you put your hands together and you pray, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I've kind of learnt along my journey is prayer is conversation with God. It's coming to him and having a chat. And so to me, it's all about talking to him throughout the day. So I'll find myself, you know, in the car, and you're talking about what you've got ahead, and you invite God into that conversation. For example, oh, God, I've got this really amazing meeting. I don't really know what to say, but you're going to go with me. So please give me the things to say and how I should be and how I can come up with the right things at the right time. So to me, prayer is a more organic conversation with God throughout the entire day. And of course, if you have a specific need, you can set aside time to talk to God. But rather than just having these appointments, you know, I don't have to set an appointment with my dad. I can just ring up and say, hey. And I find that is something with prayer. But with praises, I've found music and singing an absolute game changer for freedom of the heart.
That's so good. Yeah. And I think that's why it's such an important part of the standard church service. And I know that not all church services look like this, but when I was on the worship team, I remember they would say there's a difference. We call it praise and worship time, but actually there's praise and there's worship, two slightly different things. And that's why the first two songs you hear at a church are very like uppy, and they get you praising God. They get you leaving your problems at the door, and it's just looking up, fixing your eyes on God, and just declaring how good He is. And then they go into the more worship type songs, where now that your eyes are fixed on God, you can talk to Him about what's really going on, and you can allow Him to minister to you in the deeper parts of yourselves.
Yeah, part of my story too is that I've got teenage children, and I see, and I remember my own teenage years, we can use music to change our stance. So, for example, if you're feeling sad, a lot of, I know with my teenage girls, they'll listen to that melancholy music that reinforces, love's eluding me and I'm finding it difficult. And, when you're really angry, there's angry music, and there's a lot of music around that can do different things to the position of your heart. But I have found that praise is also part of the songs of deliverance. And when I was pregnant and I had babies, and this is really funny to me, but every single time I gave birth, I sang a song in my head. So I picked a song that really resonated with me and had a position over the fact that I was birthing. It was a song that was literally about welcome to the family. It was called To You, and you can play it there if you want. Like, I'll give you the grab. But and I used to sing it in my heart, and it's like preparing me. It's reinforcing values, and it's giving me strength. And also, I love that worship was my experience in labour. I sang every time I had a contraction. I sang that song, and I knew at what point the contraction would ease and at what point the contraction would stop, and it became my anthem. So music can bring you strength and power and change the mood and the atmosphere wherever you are. And so I would just recommend, find a song that fills your heart, sing it over and over so that your heart grabs what your head is listening to, and you change from the inside out.
So many great nuggets from today's conversation. If you are having trouble, you should pray. And if you are feeling good, you should sing praises. I think one word that really jumped out during today's conversation was the word anthem. Jo said she sang an anthem when she was pregnant and having her children, and that song was her specific song. By the way, I will be posting that on the Facebook community if you want to check it out. But what is your anthem? What is your song that you can claim during this season? I know that I went through a challenging time a few years ago, and the song that became my anthem was a song titled Famous For. I may have mentioned it earlier on the podcast. It's by Torrin Wells and Beth Johnson, I believe. And it was just such a beautiful song that declares what God is famous for. He is famous for creating miracles. He is famous for breakthroughs. He is famous for delivering. And I think for me, I needed to be reminded of who God was so that I could have the courage and the strength to keep going in my situation. And that was my anthem for a long time. Do you know what? Your anthems can change according to your season. So what song can be your anthem? What is your anthem during this season? Could you print out those lyrics and keep them somewhere where you'll see them? Could you have that song as your alarm in the morning so you wake up listening to your anthem? Worship music and praise music is powerful. And can you elevate that to really being your anthem in this season? Well, we've come to the end of today's episode, and if you want to get in touch, the email address is in the description below. Also want to encourage you to share this podcast with your friends and family, and if you haven't already, do leave a written 5-star review. A lot of people listen to this podcast, but very few write those reviews, and those reviews are the ones that enable other people to discover this podcast. So it's a small way that you can give back, and I'd encourage you to make make time for that if you can. Look forward to catching up again tomorrow here on the Everyday Joy podcast.